Welcome back to the Changemaker Podcast. I'm your host, Deke Copenhaver. Excited to have with me today my good friend Alex Wier, who graduated from the University of Georgia with an AB in English in 1997. He's the founder and chief creative officer at Wier, Stewart, a full-service creative agency in Augusta, Georgia. He's just a pretty amazing guy. They've won multiple national Addies. He's even written a movie and filmed a movie called The Greenskeeper. But Alex, before we get into this, I just want to say that your style of leadership, I believe, is embodied by the Latin saying, sic vos non vobis, which means, thus we labor, but not for ourselves.
Welcome to the Changemaker Podcast, hosted by Deke Copenhaver. Deke is the author of The Changemaker, a Forbes publishing book that has reached #1 on Amazon on multiple occasions and in multiple categories like management skills and total quality management. During this podcast, Deke interviews exceptional change-making leaders. Deke currently operates Copenhaver Consulting, where he helps local governments and other public organizations maximize their potential. He's also a sought-after public speaker. We hope that the Changemaker has an impact on you today and that you find takeaways that make you a better leader in your life. Now, here's Deke.
So welcome to the show, man.
Thank you. And I agree. I think from a very high level view of leadership is it's about the other people and not you. So it's about empowering people, giving people latitude, allowing people to make mistakes, but always basically my philosophy is coaching up, and just trying to get the best out of the people you have. And another guy wasn't a philosopher, it was in my line of work. David Ogilvy, I think, said, the key to being successful is to hire people that are better than you and then get out of their way. And so that's kind of what I've been trying to do for the past 15 or so years.
Well, and we're going to get into that and the success of Wier, Stewart, you and your business partner, Daniel Stewart, and another amazing guy that I want to have on the show as well. But I do want to get into the culture because you have built this amazing culture with Wier, Stewart. But how did you get started? And you've got an interesting story. Everybody has an interesting story, but you didn't start off. You're from Augusta. You didn't start off your career here in Augusta. But you didn't have a job really. This type of job, it didn't exist in Augusta at that point.
No, well, I went to Atlanta right after graduating from Athens because that's where the work is.
As did I.
That's what everybody did. Worked at a couple small agencies there. Actually, the first job I had was a place that Trip Bowden, who wrote Freddie and Me and a couple other books. He was a very interesting guy. You should think about that guy on the show. But worked there for a while. Had like 6 W-2s in 1 year. Decided I needed to go. I don't know if I was not super employable or what. But it was tough, and I think I got laid off. The planes hit the towers, and then we wanted to move out of Atlanta. My wife is originally from south of there, so I got a job here as first marketing director for Maybom, and then I worked there for about 1.5 years and was approached by Blanchard and Calhoun rather than work for them.
Both local real estate.
Both local, like in this market, two super dominant, really awesome and well-run family companies here, which is super unusual, especially for a market our size. But was able to sign them on a client, and that allowed me to, take a step off. And usually in a creative thing, you have a copywriter and a designer. And I was an English major at Georgia, and kind of a self-taught designer when I was going through Atlanta, and that kind of gave me, the toehold I needed to get started. So I got started. Do you want to hear about the entire journry?
Yeah, I want to hear more about the journey, and then I do want to hear. We have spent a lot of time together, obviously, but some funny stories. I know you've invented your own language, and at some point we have to touch on that as well.
That was one of the times I got fired.
Exactly.
It was actually a language that my mother and her aunt and my mother and my aunt invented. They were sisters. They called it alfalfa language. And in Atlanta, I worked for these Dutch guys, and they would come into the room with me and the two other designers, and they would speak about us in Dutch, which we didn't understand. So it would be like, they would say, that's that. This is my fake Dutch, and you would just hear them go, Deke, Deke. And so I said to them, hey guys, we're right here. If you have something to say, just say it in English, say it in language you understand. I'm a grown man, I can take it, whatever. Well, they continued to do this. So I taught one of the other guys, he couldn't speak it, but he could understand it, how to speak this language called alfalfa that, like I said, my aunt and my mother invented. So I said, the next time these guys come in here and speak about us in a language we can't understand, we're going to talk about them in a language they can't understand either. And so they came in one day and they did it again. And I said, Hilfe, Dilfi stolfas kalfas are all for alpha solfas. And Carlo lost his mind. And then about 2 hours later, I was my position was eliminated, and that was the end of that job. So, great decision making all the way up to this point.
No, but Alex, and I think part of change-making leadership is there's a bit of irreverence to it. And I grew up a huge punk rock fan, and I believe, you're a music fan as well, but I took away that irreverence, and it made me sort of willing to challenge the status quo and to challenge authority because I grew up a punk rock fan.
Yeah, it's a very anti-authoritarian thing, and I think that's one of the things that we've kind of been friends, is that little vein of Gen X-y, like whatever. I asked the guy not to do it a couple of times. It was bullshit, and they kept doing it, and that was just kind of my way of protesting it, and he was the man, so he fired me, and that was fine.
Yes.
But he did. He wrote on like he gave me a thing. You would get a paper saying that your position had been eliminated versus being fired, so you could draw unemployment. And he wrote. It said like reason for termination, and he had written like 2 lines and then blacked it out with a Sharpie. And so when he was, telling me I was gone, I was like, what did this say? And he's like, oh, well, it's just not a fit. And I was like, no, what did it say? And he never told me. And then security came and escorted me out. But yeah, I think, challenge is a part of that. I think basically, a lot of the philosophy that we've had over there is just one that I already had, and that Daniel kind of shared, is like, what do you not like about things? What are the things that you see that you've seen as an employee or in bad jobs you've had, or things that are just that are not done right? And then how do you avoid those things? In order to make it a place that people want to be. Yeah. Because ultimately, I think especially in a creative endeavor, but I would hazard to guess almost all endeavors, if you're in a good place, you're going to do better work. Yeah. You're going to be more efficient. You're going to be more apt to collaborate if you're not, pissed or feel like you're being marginalized or something, or you feel like something's unfair.
Well, and that, to me, you see some businesses and organizations, and I see this a lot with governments, particularly local governments that I've had experience with, yes. But it can be a culture.
At the highest level.
At the highest level, there can be a culture of fear where nobody wants to stick their neck out because they don't want to get it chopped off. And I just think that that's not productive at all. And you go back to empowering your employees and creating a culture, which you guys have done fantastically well at Wier Stewart, where people want to come to work, and you get great employees because you're an employer of choice in your field.
Yeah. Well, like you said, like sticking your neck out, and again, the name of our game is differentiate. That's what advertising or branding or anything is about. It's like, make this thing different than the other things that are like it, And so what that entails is getting outside of that kind of lane, like in leadership, if you take rote things that you've seen all your life about this is how you lead, and you only apply those things to your leadership, then you're not going to make any sort of advance in it.
No.
You're not going to do anything special that no one's seen. And that's weird, because I think you're right. I think that's a fear thing, like, because I have pressure, I'm gonna shrink into this place where I'm least likely to make a mistake. And when you do that, it's just going to be something middle of the road at best.
Yeah, you've got to push the envelope to innovate, and something that a campaign that you guys did that is still to this day one of my favorites. And I'll touch on this. I think humor is a huge part of good leadership.
I agree.
You got to be willing to laugh at yourself. But a number of years ago, you guys did the Flipping the Bird campaign.
Yeah.
Which for Wife Saver Chicken here locally, and I thought that was brilliant. But you did ruffle some feathers in the process, no pun intended.
That's right. Like the lieutenant governor.
Like the lieutenant governor.
And a couple of other people.
So tell us a little bit about the Flipping the Birds campaign.
Well, what was one thing that was cool about this, like you said, about people taking risk and stuff, is that Chris, who owns Wife Saver, did it. Basically, though, their challenge was, they're an institution here, tailgating, funerals, birthdays, big family parties, like that stuff it's always there. And it's great. The product is excellent, but nobody was thinking to go there on a Tuesday, because it's just associated with other things. So just wanted to make it top of mind. So like, how do they get attention? And then how do they get attention with like the budget that they had? And we're like, well, you have grassroots campaigns and things that start off with like, yard signs and things like that. But what would that be about? And then we were just researching chicken. And it's like it's the big, like Georgia by itself would be the 4th largest chicken producing country in the world, behind like 3 others. So, and then we found out that the brown thrasher was a state bird, and we were like, well, that doesn't make any sense. The state bird does nothing. I mean, the brown thrasher doesn't do anything for the economy. It's not delicious. It's not part of our, culture and all that kind of stuff. So we came up with this idea to, as a campaign to change the Georgia state bird from the brown thrasher to the chicken. And in doing so, I mean, a guy from like the LA Times, I think, came out and did something on it. It was everywhere. I think Chris got interviewed a million times, not to let the cat out of the bag, but we let it was Chris's idea. So that was the thing of just taking something like that and making it just so everybody wanted those yard signs, and then everybody got those stickers. And then what happened is you're driving home and you see a million of those signs and you go, man, that is good chicken. And then, it paid off at the register. But, he was willing to take that risk, and that was a very weird idea. And a lot of that stuff, and I think, like you said, in terms of leadership or kind of breaking rules, it's like, okay, this is either a really good idea or it's bad. Yeah. It's real bad. And I think some of the best stuff kind of lives in that space. Yeah.
Well, so what are some of the other campaigns? And one of the things you and I have discussed over the years is sometimes, and I mentioned you guys winning multiple national Addies, but Deanna Brown Thomas and I touched on it recently in a conversation about her father, that I guess it's biblical, prophet in his own hometown. You guys are not just local. I mean, you're all over the Southeast. Sometimes you guys are in your industry, and based on the Addies, I mean, you're a pretty big deal. I know you're humble and don't want to admit that, but you guys have done, for being headquartered in Augusta, you've had a real impact on the industry.
Yeah, I mean, we've been published in everything that I thought I would never be published in. And we went to I remember the first time we went to the National Addies, the first thing that won an award was the Volkswagen Darth Vader ad. And I was like, God, we are just massively outclassed here, But we're at the table. And so I long ago, some guy told me, I was like, I was on this guy's plane, and I was like, how do you get to this kind of level of success? And he said, you just keep your head down and you just keep digging, and it's like, you just do good work and you just do good work. And so by doing that, we just kind of get passed around. And it's interesting because we've had years where we do tons of stuff in New York, and then we end up having someone in Nashville, and then we, and it just, all these things just kind of move around. But at the end of the day, it's just kind of, and this is a cultural thing, is we've got a couple things we're working on right now that just people have been beating their head against the wall because it's just like, it's not good enough yet. It's not good enough yet. It's not good enough yet. And, just dedicating yourself to a very, very high standard and never compromising on that. That's the Gen X thing.
Yeah.
Will get you there.
Well, I think as long as you continue to do good work and it's high quality, and I've always said that the best advertising is literally word of mouth. Good word of mouth. I mean, it's not on your level of advertising, but it's really, very effective because what you do is generate good word of mouth.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, it's a firsthand endorsement from someone, of somebody else. I mean, it was like when you didn't spend any advertising in the second one. Mm-hmm. Wasn't that right?
In this, in the third campaign, no, I didn't do any advertising because I figured if people didn't know me by that point,
and everybody would have said that is a huge mistake.
Yeah.
You need to do that.
Yep.
And doing something that no one expected you to do, had terrific results.
Well, and I want to get into something, and it's an idea, a concept that can be a little bit difficult to wrap your head around, and that we don't see all the time these days, because oftentimes it's all about winning or about profits.
Let's get weird. But altruism. And I think about the campaign that you helmed during the pandemic.
Yeah. We Give a Shirt. Amazing campaign, just a very creative idea on how to help people during the midst of a crisis. So that to me really shows altruism in action. So if you could share with our listeners a little bit about that campaign and your thoughts on altruism as well.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like you said, in the Virgil's Quatrain thing, like, it's not for yourself, it's for others. And when the whole pandemic thing happened, my brother had just opened a restaurant, Noble Jones, and we have all these places up and down Broad Street that were a part of that community. They're shutting down and they're getting choked out, because no one's out there. There were these things that were popping up that were meant to help basically restaurants and service industry people during the pandemic. But it was like, how is this money getting allocated out to them, and how are they raising funds, and will it be distributed fast enough, and all that sort of thing. And so we were like, well, how can we help? And we came up with this thought that, if we made these T-shirts for somebody, for the specific restaurants or bars or businesses, we would give them all the money from those T-shirts. And we were really scared at first because we had to sell like 48, because that's like the minimum, that you could order. And so Sports Center was like one of the first ones, and I think they sold 404. And I have no idea how they did that, because I don't think they are on the internet. I don't know if Sandy knows what the internet is. But we were able to, quickly generate money, get it to them fast, because our sales cycle was a week. We put something up. We put up 10 on Tuesday and 10 on Friday. So we're doing 20 a week, and we'd let them run a week. And at the end of the week, we closed it. We sent those things off to the printer. We cut the check to the business owners, and we got it going. And at the end of the day, we raised $250,000 locally, which is insane.
And then
I think the really coolest thing about this is, in the spirit of altruism, is I think that everybody wants to help. I think especially Augusta, Georgia has a very giving heart, and people look around, they can't do a lot, but if you can buy a t-shirt, for your favorite restaurant, or if you can buy one a week for $20, that's all it costs you is $20, and we would ship it and they get the money from it, then you're part of the fight, but you're not stroking some huge check. It was like a very grassroots thing that I think spoke highly of the nature of the people in our town. And
that's to me one of the tenets of change-making leadership is the ability to rally people around causes that are bigger than themselves. And you touched on it. You could see during the pandemic, people, and it's still going on, and I mean, there are places all throughout the world that are shut down at this point, but it was a very strange situation in that people wanted to help, but it's like, well, I can't go volunteer at something because I can't, but
or I'm personally getting shut down, and I'm unsure of what I'm going to do, but I love the whiskey bar, and I got $20 to help him out, or however that goes.
But you guys were able to rally our community around the cause, give people entry. I mean, make them feel a part of that. They are doing something to help, even if it's just buying a $20 t-shirt. I think that's change-making leadership in action.
Yeah. One of the coolest things was we had a ticket. So we built an e-commerce platform site in like 3 days. It was incredible. And, that was all Wes and Chris and Aaron and those guys, but it had a ticker on it, and I remember we all got on a Zoom call when it hit 10,000. Like, we've given away $10,000 to charity, and everybody was like, everybody had a drink and got on the Zoom call, and it ended up at 250. That's just, and I'm saying that's the tribute to the people that were actually buying into it, which is cool. Well, I'd like to ask you something about leadership.
Oh, absolutely, man.
If you don't mind.
And we've basically, for our audience, we get together a lot. We're actually having some beers today because I asked Alex before we did this, I'm like, hey, man, you want to go have a cocktail after this? And he's like, dude, I've got something to do, but can't we just have a few while we're on the show? And I'm like, yes, we can. And so please ask away.
Right. So Deke brought a cooler. No, I want to ask you about this because I'm interested on your opinion. This is something I've been thinking about lately because you dealing in your governmental relationships and some of the stuff you've had to deal with. I think a big component of being able to bring people together and get people going in the right direction is empathy.
Yep.
But really understanding people's context.
Mm-hmm.
And then in a leadership perspective, not letting your own context make you make assumptions about where someone else is coming from.
Mm-hmm. You've got to get out of your own way sometimes. And it's hard because I think particularly as men in the South, but most every place, we want to fix problems, and you just want to interject yourself into the situation. And sometimes to sit back and listen is not always the easiest place to get to. I had a speaking engagement last week, and I had a lady who's in a management position say, how can you be vulnerable to your employees without giving too much away, without saying, I'm actually freaked out in the middle of this situation too. Right. And I said, it's not, you can still be vulnerable, but you have to maintain your composure. And there's being tough and maintaining your composure are two totally separate things.
I agree.
But that's, in order to bring people together, it's that listening without prejudice and making people feel comfortable. I had a CEO in Atlanta reach out to me at the beginning of this week and had a great conversation with him today about doing leadership coaching. And I said, I really hope we get the chance to work together, because this is, you and I, our conversations over lots of cocktails, I've learned from you, and I think that's collaborative leadership. You learn from everybody, and don't be afraid to ask questions. But I said, I would love to help coach you, because I'm going to learn from you, and I'm going to listen to you, and your life experience is different than mine. But
yeah, I mean, I think one of the most important things you can do from a leadership perspective is talk to people in leadership positions that are in industries different from yours.
Yeah.
I've got a friend that works out at the nuclear power plant, Matthew Norris, and he is an engineer. He is completely the opposite of what I do. But you'd be surprised how much you can share about how you deal with certain situations, or how you manage people, or how you look for efficiencies and things. I mean, I think you find out more from people that don't do what you do than you find out from people that do what you do, because like we were saying earlier, you get real narrow. They're best practices for the people that do what I do. I don't even really understand what I do.
I don't know.
But you know what I mean? There's like these are the things you do, and then you look to other people, and you can figure out, like, by listening to them, well, this is a similar situation that I'm having. They're going about solving it in a way I never even would have thought of.
Yeah.
And can I apply this to what I'm doing? And then I think another thing in leadership is if you're trying, like you talk about that man thing and wanting to fix it, figure it out, look at it and say, okay, well, it may work if we do this, then implement it. Right. And if it doesn't work, and be okay with it failing. Exactly.
And that's, you're going to learn more from failure than you ever do from success. But I'll go back to something you said about being able to figure out what I do. Where Stewart did the brand for my business, Copenhaver Consulting, when I came out of office. And do you remember when you asked me what my spirit animal was, what I said? What did you say? I can't remember. What was it? The duck-billed platypus. Yeah,
because I'm like,
nobody understands what it does, but it gets the job done.
Right.
So I'm not sure.
It's an amalgamation.
It's an amalgamation
of a bunch of random
experiences. So I'm just an amalgamation. But really, here again, it's you. I think in today's world, and I've said this, and my listeners have heard me say this, that you can, using fear and intimidation to get your desired outcome, you can make a lot of money, or you can be successful politically, but I don't think that's sustainable. But I think what you have done, and Daniel, in building that culture at Wier Stewart, where people want to come to work and they want to be a part of it because they're part of that creative process. And you've established an environment where your team is part of something bigger than themselves, and something very cool that is recognized as cool. But I want to get into the cool thing, because you and I have had lots of discussions about this. For our listeners, a number of years ago, while I was still in office, there was a big debate. We had a president of a local university say that Augusta was not cool enough.
Oh, yeah.
And so then we had all these focus groups saying, how can Augusta be cooler, and all this. And I'm like, and you and I have had if you don't know, you just don't. I mean,
if you have to let people know you're cool, you're not.
Yes. And I was like, you and I had a conversation. I'm like, do you think James Brown actually turned around to his backup band and said, do you think that dance move was cool? I'm like, either you are or you aren't. You can't manufacture cool.
Yeah. No, you can't. And I think, some of that stuff is a matter of confidence, and in a leadership perspective, like when you're talking about those people that, I think what I heard you saying earlier was like, people don't want to feel like, I don't want to say like they're soft, but they don't want to be too vulnerable.
Yeah.
Right. There's some people I think that are in leadership position, and they were like, well, if I'm too cool to Deke, then he won't know that I'm the man, right? And then I can boss his ass around, or I'm going to be like, I'm weak. And I think confidence, which is what you're talking about, the cool, is the kind of thing that if you have enough confidence to basically have accountability for yourself.
Yep.
Admit if you're ever wrong to somebody, which James Brown probably never did, but he probably wasn't ever. In terms of what he was doing professionally with his band, was probably never wrong. But that kind of thing, I think, shows people that you're real.
Yeah.
And then I think that is, the thing of being empathetic with people and all that kind of stuff is just like friend stuff. you want to bond up with them. There's still always going to be a hierarchy of who's in charge, but you know, you don't want to charge the hill with some asshole that doesn't even know,
No, but
the name of your kids.
But I use as an example, you and I served on the board of the Exchange Club of Augusta here locally. And after our board retreat, you and our friend Scott Davis and I rode back from the board retreat together.
That was a great ride.
Yeah, and we went there and like opened up completely. So then we get back to my house and we continued to open up as well. But I'm like, that was a great thing. And I'm like, it just feels good to open yourself up and to connect with people. But there's also, so the CEO I had a conversation with today, I said, there's got to be a level of trust to do that. And what we discussed, the three of us that day, I was comfortable talking about it because I knew you guys weren't going to go out and broadcast it to everybody. But that trust level allows for that opening up, and I think it helps people grow as people if they can trust that you to keep confidences with them.
I agree, and I mean, I've always referred to that as having a vault.
Yep.
Like my wife has gotten on to me before because she would say, like, "Did you hear that this happened X, Y, and Z?" And I'm like, "Yeah." She's like, "When did you hear about it?" And I'm like, 6 months ago. She's like, "God, you've got a vault," and it's if you're solid with people and you're trustworthy, then you get all kinds of input, man.
Yep.
And you get like saying that ride, the kind of stuff we were talking about on that ride was such a good, solid kind of human conversation that you don't really ever get into with everybody because generally we're just having some cocktails, we're shooting at light, we talk about some politics, talk about some stuff like that. When you really get into those kinds of things, it's just super informative. It's kind of good for everybody.
It is, and it's therapeutic, And I'll tell you, in that vulnerability, I'll tell you a story that I may or may not have told you that was one of those moments for me. My first year in that office, I was speaking to a Christian alternative school, right? And so it's some Christian teens with issues, and so this was in 2006, and I was actually running again that year because I'd run in 2005 to fulfill an unexpired term. And so with parents in the room and a bunch of teenagers, I opened it up to questions and I said, feel free to ask me anything you want. First question, have you ever done drugs? And I'm like, look, I will tell you, I wish I could say I haven't, but I can't say that. I said, but I will also tell you this, I've seen so many people who drugs have ruined their lives. They were very promising guys I went to school with that, should have been big successes in business and in life in general. I said, I've never seen long-term drug use lead to anything good for anybody. And true. But that's the truth. And so I had parents coming up to me afterwards saying, thank you for being honest. It wasn't like I said, with no disrespect towards a past president, it wasn't like I said I didn't inhale.
Yeah, you didn't hedge it.
No, I didn't hedge it. But I called my wife, Melissa, on the way home, and I said, it just felt so good to be honest. And, I'm in the middle of a campaign year. If I could have been guarded and said, no, I've never, done that. But I'm like, it just being open and honest connects you to people.
Yeah, and another thing about being open and honest, I think, is just, trying to learn from other people. Yeah. It's like when somebody goes, hey, do you know about so-and-so? And you say, oh, yeah, I think I've heard of that, right?
Yeah.
Rather than just saying, no.
Yeah.
Like, explain that to me.
Mm-hmm.
Everywhere that I ever worked coming up, I was never the best designer. And every time someone did something, I would be like, how are you doing that? Why did you do that? Why did you make this choice? What are you doing? And just ask, instead of, because of you don't want anyone to think that you're weak or something. You just, you know everything. You don't learn anything if you don't say, no, I don't know what that is. What is that?
It's Colin Morikawa wins the British Open.
That was icy.
Yes. I mean, just last
Super
weekend.
classy, man.
Oh,
Thanked
my
everybody
gosh.
first. Thanked the amateur.
Yeah.
Or said the amateur was going to be great. Thank the fans. He
And
was great.
had him sing happy birthday to his caddy.
Yeah, that was cool.
But one of the things that so what an example to me, that guy is going to be a leader in that sport. I mean, he's a sportsman, he's a gentleman, he remembers to thank everybody, all the things that are great qualities of leadership to me. But it goes to something that you just said. Some of the commentators were talking about, he's a sponge. He asks the older players questions, exactly what you said, why did you do this? How do you do this?
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's growing as a leader if you're willing to say, I don't have all the answers. I don't want to be, I can't be the man right off the bat. And even, I don't think you're ever, I mean, you can be the man, but for periods of time, but I mean, nobody's the man for life. We're all just,
I literally today was talking to a couple of people in the office, and I said, it's not about you, it's about other people.
Yep.
That's what we were saying in the beginning. Like, that is what it's about. Colin talked to the amateur, thanked his caddy, thanked the gallery, thanked the R&A before he ever said anything about, I feel like I played great, or I don't even know if he even said that. He may have just thanked everybody and never talked about himself at all. But great leadership, a fruitful life is never going to be lived, with your interest in mind, because that's just ultimately not what it's about. It's about other people.
It is just putting other people first and not putting yourself on a pedestal above other people. And that's the great leaders that I see. There was a huge class to Maraquara, but there's also humility, and that humility, I think, attracts people. And here again, it's just, I go back to, so in talking to the CEO today, he said, what sets you apart from other leadership coaches? And I said, you know what? I'm going to tell you, I've actually never done leadership coaching in an official capacity. It's what my book is about. It's what I speak about, but I'm not going to tell you that I've done that in an official capacity. But one thing I will tell you is I see a lot of consultants and a lot of coaches where they've never really had any experience on the front lines. And I want to go back to something that you touched on earlier is, talking to leaders in other fields, it's still, if you're the man in the middle and you're who everybody's looking to when, things go down, that's translatable across fields, across everything.
I mean, I just think there's all problems are the same on some level, being that they are a problem.
Yeah.
So when we do, we'll have people say like, well, have you ever done work for a, cotton candy manufacturer? And we're like, no, but it's the same problem.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? It's just what is the problem? Who are the people that can influence the problem? What does a solution look like? What's a good outcome? What are the possible things that could happen that would make this really go bad? And then, all right, well, let's get everybody together and let's try to figure this thing out. That's kind of universally the same across things. So it's always been very instructive for me to listen to other people say, one of the valves got stuck at the plant. Okay, well, what happens then? Well, it triggers this series of events. All right, well, what happened then? Well, then this guy had to do this and this person had to do this. Well, what did you do about that? And we did this. Okay. And talk about somebody else's thing kind of helps you. It's so hard to think about your own, it's very difficult. Like, it's hard for us to do our own kind of marketing stuff, I feel like.
Yep.
I think we could do a good job, but it's way easier to like do yours.
Yeah.
Say, what are you about? And you tell us, and we say, okay, well, you're about these 4 things. And you say, yes, I agree. And then we create parameters for ourselves, and we make whatever we have to make that's, going to be appropriate. It's way harder to do that for yourself.
Oh, exactly. I couldn't agree more. But so to shift gears and to sort of get into some stuff we like, which is music. before coming on air, we had a very interesting conversation. So we're getting a little bit away from leadership. Maybe this does involve leadership. Why do you think that bands just cannot, most of them, there are some exceptions, can't wear shorts on stage?
You know what? I think, again, like you say, one, it's genre. Genre is definitely a thing because there's some genres it doesn't matter. But if you're talking pure rock and roll from ages down, it's because that's kind of a rule.
Yeah.
You know, and you have to be outside of it to break the rule. Like you were talking about Angus Young.
Yeah.
Like if you listen to their music, you would not assume that one of them is dressed like a schoolboy.
True.
Right?
At the age of 70-something years old now.
Right. And that's like a weird thing that's like totally unrelated to what their little zeitgeist is.
But it's marketing and it's branding.
Yeah, but he's working it. You know, and like we said, all those guys from California can break it.
Yeah.
You know, it's just a
the
rule.
Chili Peppers.
Yeah. It's like pro golfers wearing, you know, you can't wear shorts on the PGA.
Well, you're a musician. Did you ever wear shorts on stage?
I was telling you I was begged not to by Joe Stevenson a lot. I'm sure I did at one point or another, but generally it was like jeans. Occasionally kind of a joke. It was leather pants when we were in Atlanta. But yeah, I mean, I would, but it would be a more casual setting.
Yes. Well, so let me ask you this, and we'll sort of close it down with this. If you could have beers with a leader, and it doesn't matter alive or dead, not, you know, some people ask if you could have dinner with, I'm going to say if you could have cocktails with,
right?
Because it's us. Who would that be, and why?
I would love to have cocktails with Ernest Hemingway. You know, I don't know what kind of leader the guy was. I mean, from a leadership perspective, I may go another way.
He was a leader in the literary. He's a literary giant.
I was an English major. He is my favorite writer. I think everyone should read Old Man and the Sea because I think it is just the perfect kind of analogy for life and everything. And the guy could do it.
Yes.
You know, I mean, there are pictures of him like 8, 9 deep shooting a lit cigarette out of a bullfighter's mouth. and I would,
okay, just say
he
was
awesome.
He was a badass.
Yeah, he was a huge badass. I mean, he was in 2 plane crashes in Africa. I mean, he was, you know, I would love to hear that guy talk about, you know, his craft and generally what his thoughts were on life and everything.
And then probably being mere mortals, you or me would pass out and then wake back up and he'd still be talking.
Yeah. It'd be like, like if you're going to go smoke weed with Willie Nelson, your vision's going to go into black and white in the first 45 seconds and you're not going to remember anything. But no, I don't know. I mean, Hemingway could have been a massive narcissist. I have no idea. I don't know that he had an altruistic bent, but the guy didn't. I mean, his gift was, you know, the stories he told and how other people can see themselves in it, and just, you know, that must be hugely fulfilling. But yeah. I would go with Hemingway for drinks.
I'd come with you.
Yes,
because we need to get together and have drinks more. But it's been a pleasure to be with you today to discuss leadership, Hemingway, music, Angus Young, all the most important things in life, as far as I'm concerned.
Yes.
But brother, it is always a pleasure to be with you.
You too, man.
Dropping the mic and we out.
All right. Thanks.